It's a windy day and the temps are falling. So is the snow, even cats and dogs. I'm going to get you up to speed on all of it. Plus, we have a geomagnetic storm inbound. We had an earthquake yesterday and severe weather's ramping up as we get toward the end of the week. I've got you covered top to bottom. You're on board the Cold Rain Express, so strap in. A new episode of Cold Rain's Weather World starts right now. Hello and happy Tuesday out there, folks. Jason Pritchard here with you. I'm so glad that you are here with me for another exciting edition of Cold Rain's Weather World, the fastest growing new weather show on the internet. As a matter of fact, we're growing so fast, we're only 468 billion subscribers behind Max Velocity and Ryan Hall, y'all combined. So we are catching up quick. We're at 296. We added a subscriber yesterday. So thank you so much for subscribing to the channel. If you haven't done so, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Give us a like if you like the content. And, we're going to grow. We're going to have a good time here. And I'm going to teach you about the weather. We're going to see the upcoming weather and cover all the events that are on the horizon and even stuff that you don't get on other channels because we've got all the weather right here. In fact, we're the only weather show that leaves you feeling good, more confident, and even smarter than when you came in. So we're going to start today, as we always do, with our weather IQ question. And today's weather IQ question is about wind. We have a lot of questions about wind, but here is one that you may not know. We're going to talk about it today, so you're going to know it. What is the Beaufort scale used to measure humidity, precipitation, wind speed, or air pressure? So that might be a new one for you because we don't really talk about that scale very much. But if you know it, type it in the comments section. And if you don't know it, just wait till the end of the show. And as always, I will reveal it to you. So there is your trivia or your weather IQ question for the day. We've got a few items to get into today. We've got some geological events to talk about. Plus, we're going to talk about the upcoming severe weather threat that really starts to kick into high gear as we get later into the week and into the weekend. And we're going to look at that and what's causing it. We'll take a look at the long range as well. And as usual, I'll have the show segments typed out and split up and the video divided so that you can understand exactly what's where and you can get to where you need to go very quickly. If you don't have time to watch the whole video, I'll have that in the description of this video. But again, thanks for joining us. We're going to start here on the volcano page. Nothing new here, just 4 active areas that we've been watching: Ihi, Kilauea, Sitkin, and Spur up here. So there's no change from yesterday with any of those. We did have an earthquake. We've had a few earthquakes actually in Southern California. A 5.2 magnitude at a depth of 8 miles occurred near San Diego, and people actually felt some shaking there, and some minor damage was done. Nothing major, but had a little bit of an earthquake swarm out there, 2 or 3 other quakes, small quakes as well. So hopefully that doesn't is not a prelude to anything, but it's good to know what's going on. A couple of little minor quakes down here in Texas, nothing major there, but it's good to understand what's going on there. We've got a geomagnetic storm that's inbound from a couple of solar filaments that erupted off the sun over the course of the weekend. A G2 storm is going to hit the Earth the next day or so, and tomorrow we might actually see some auroras come down into the mid latitudes. Not today, but maybe tomorrow night. So be aware of that. Now we're going to get into the weather. So our satellite picture shows a storm here winding up in Canada, a cold front extending from that. You can see this all the way around. You see how this is kind of coming around like this. This is our cold front in there. That's a terrible drawing of a cold front, but that's what's going on. Behind that cold front, folks, it is colder. So we're going to get chilly in the east compared to normal. And then we're going to warm up as we get toward the weekend out here in the east. It's warm out here in the plains, and so windy along this cold front. So the folks in the east particularly batten down the hatches today and hold on to your hats. The wind's going to gust. In terms of the radar, most of the precipitation is confined to the Great Lakes, where we're seeing some snow. Several inches of snow has fallen up here in the UP of Michigan. Light snow is continuing in Michigan, mostly rain south of that. Some light showers and sprinkles working into eastern Ohio. A couple of light showers up between Richmond and Washington from Virginia over into the Delmarva region, and just some sprinkles in the mountains of North Carolina. So not much going on in terms of precipitation. This front is moisture starved. There's just not a lot to work with. And so most of the activity associated with the front is going to be wind and cooler temperatures behind it, and a few sprinkles out here in near the Four Corners region. So that's what's going on radar wise. In terms of our hazards map, not a lot of activity here. Some wind advisories up in the east, a couple of frost advisories in the upper Midwest. Still got some winter weather advisories hanging on up here in Michigan and over here in New York for some enhanced lake effect snow. Could pick up a couple of inches of snow around there. Winter storm watch in the Rockies and up toward the Bighorns, and then high wind warnings for some wind in the next couple of days out here in New Mexico. So that's what's going on around the country. Now, as I said earlier, we've got severe weather creeping back into the picture, folks, as we get into tomorrow. Yesterday, there was not a marginal risk here. Today, a marginal risk has popped up for what? What are we looking at? No tornadoes, not much wind, and a little bit greater threat of hail over a larger area. So we've got some wind shear that's occurring out here as we get through the afternoon and evening hours tomorrow, and given a little bit of upper level energy, some isolated severe weather reports are not out of the question. We actually saw a fairly significant number of hail and wind reports up here in the West Virginia, Kentucky, Virginia area that we talked about yesterday on the show. Actually, I saw a couple of reports over 2 inches in terms of 2-inch size hail, and one report of 3-inch size hail here in the southernmost little tip here of Ohio. This is Lawrence County. They had 3-inch hail reported there. That's baseball size, folks. That's big. That'll dent your car up very efficiently. So we saw that. Some wind reports as well. Some winds gusting into the 60s and 70s. Actually, the highest wind gust I saw was out here, actually up here in northeastern Nebraska. But anyway, tomorrow, just be alert if you're in Nebraska, Kansas area, somewhere around Topeka and up into Lincoln. You can see small chance of some large hail with those storms. As we get on into Friday, that threat shifts east. We've got a slight risk out for mostly here in Iowa, northeastern or eastern Nebraska and northern Missouri. This is Maryville, this is Lincoln, Columbus, and Omaha, Sioux City, Des Moines, and getting on up into Waterloo. You guys are all in under the gun for a slight risk. And we're looking at potentially a significant area of severe weather possible. We're not really looking at tornadoes here, but mostly we're talking about a hail and wind threat. Probably large hail is the actual main focus, with some of these supercells that could develop in the evening. A little low pressure is going to get organized, a little more wind energy, and so we'll see a little bit more organization here as we get into the day on Friday. So if we take a look at what's driving this, it's energy in the upper levels of the atmosphere, or the mid-levels. Actually, we've got a mid-level jet streak that's working in. This is Thursday morning, so I'm starting at Thursday morning. The threat Wednesday is tomorrow's sort of meager, so we're going to focus on the little bit more of a robust threat Thursday into Friday. So as we roll the jet forward, we're looking at this trough working in to the west, and ahead of that trough, when we see these troughs coming in like this, got a northern branch, and we've got a southern branch as well. You see how those two branches are kind of separate. You can tell by the colors here. And so we've got this wind energy working in the mid-levels. And ahead of these areas of energy, you get lift. So you see that? So particularly in the left exit region of these. And so as this pushes on in, look what happens. It strengthens as we get on into the overnight hours and into Friday morning. So really this area up here is going to have some nice wind shear to work with. Moisture return is not all that great. So if we're looking at moisture return, this is Wednesday, late in the day, Wednesday afternoon. Moisture return, we're getting dew points into the 50s and low, maybe around 60, close to 60 as we get into Thursday afternoon and evening. Then we start to see a little bit better moisture return come in as we get on into Thursday and toward Friday. So that's what's going on there. So we're seeing a little bit of an overlapping of some moisture return and some wind energy. We're going to have that lift. We're going to spark some thunderstorms, and some of those could rotate and produce some large hail as we get into the day on Friday. And as we take a look at that, or rather Thursday, and so as we take a look at that, how that plays out, we're looking at Wednesday after or Thursday morning here. This is Thursday morning, so you can see how this low pressure is a little low pressure that's starting to take hold here in the upper Great Plains. Showers and storms starting to develop along that the leading edge of that boundary. And so as we go through the day on over the evening on Thursday, look at this, Thursday night into Friday morning, we're seeing this low pressure start to strengthen and a little bit more organization around that. So pay attention up here in Iowa over the nighttime hours, Thursday into Friday, for some potential large hail. A couple of damaging wind reports are not out of the question too. So we're going to take a look at the rest of the week into Friday, into the weekend, and see what that holds. But first, I have a little fun fact to share with you. This is a do you know? As you know, raining cats and dogs is a popular phrase. And I've often wanted to know where that phrase came from. So, do you know that the phrase likely originated in 17th century England and is associated with heavy rains and the idea of animals being washed down the streets? There wasn't a lot of great infrastructure back in those days, so drainage was often an issue, and things with heavy rain would get washed down the streets, and so there were a lot of stray animals, and sometimes they would die and just be washed down the street. So there is the thought that it could be associated with raining cats and dogs could be associated with some of those animals being washed away as large rain events would take place, heavy rain events would take place. There's also another theory. I'll just run this by you too, just so you have it. In Norse mythology, where Odin, the storm god, was accompanied by dogs and cats that were often associated with witches and storms. Of course, that could have been the origin of that phrase too, but I think the first one that I mentioned is more likely. The first known usage of the phrase raining cats and dogs was actually credited to British poet Henry Vaughan in 1651. So now you know where the phrase raining cats and dogs came from. So there's three things to highlight as we get toward the end of the week and we take a look at kind of the long range. First is the severe weather threat that's going to increase through the week into the weekend. And I'm not looking at a major severe weather outbreak where you see lots and lots of tornadoes and some sort of historic, widespread severe weather outbreak. But the parameters are coming together for multiple days of severe weather, and we'll see how that shakes out. But it looks primarily to be like a wind and hail threat at this time. Tornadoes certainly will be possible, but a widespread tornado outbreak does not look likely at this point. But, stay tuned. Things can change, and I'll cover it every single day. So we've got severe weather upcoming. We've got heavy rain over some areas that have seen flooding already. And we've got windy conditions, at least over the next 2 or 3 days, that will develop. But looking at the severe threat, this is our D4 threat. This is for Friday. And so stretching from Wichita Falls, Texas, all the way up through Oklahoma City to Fayetteville, Arkansas, Kansas City, up into St. Louis, and over into Chicago, Lansing, Michigan, Madison, Wisconsin. We're looking at a corridor of severe weather possible on Friday. That threat, particularly the northern part of that, shifts over to the east as we get into Saturday. So Paducah, Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky, Union City, Tennessee, into the center part of Arkansas, including Little Rock, maybe Fort Smith down here into Abilene, Texas. So we're seeing a nice increase in Texas for part of that. And by the way, on Friday, the northern areas of this line up here from, say, Illinois up into Michigan, we're looking at a potential for an increase over the course of the next couple of days in the severe weather threat. This is like a slight risk, sort of the equivalent of a slight risk level 2 that's being shown here. But it would not surprise me to see this top area of this risk increase to an enhanced over the course of the next couple of days. Farther south, there's a bit of a cap in the atmosphere, so we'll see how that shakes out if we can break the cap. And then day 6, Sunday, from Dallas up into the southern tip of Illinois, that includes all of Arkansas. So pay attention in these areas over the weekend. We're going to see plenty of opportunities for severe weather, and generally the wind threat over the next couple of days. First of all, as we roll this into motion, this is from time 0 all the way up into this evening, we're going to see wind pick up across the east in earnest from Georgia up into New England, where gusts routinely will be in the 30s, potentially some 40s in spots associated with that front. And then as we go through the next couple of days, you can see out here in the The desert southwest, southern plains area wind picks up in association with some of the energy working into the desert southwest and the jet stream. So we're going to see gusts into the 50s, maybe even 60s in New Mexico. High wind warnings are up for that. So you can see a large area is going to be affected over the next 3 days with when it comes to gusty winds outside of thunderstorms. So pay attention for the wind threat. That's a real thing that we need to monitor. Now, in terms of the jet stream, as we get on into Friday morning, this is Friday morning. So we're looking at these spokes of energy rounding the trough in the jet stream, and these jet streaks that you see out ahead of these, and associated with these, you're getting shear in the atmosphere, as we always talk about. And so as that wind energy increases with height, you have lift, and if you have warm, unstable air at the surface, you can certainly have clusters of severe thunderstorms that develop in certain conditions, can lead to greater severe weather threats than others. But in this case, we've got plenty of energy as we go through the day on Saturday. That broad area of flow continues out of the southwest. That helps to pump in moisture from the Gulf of Cold Rain that exists through the weekend on Sunday. We start to get a little troughing in the northeast, so maybe some cooler temperatures working back in there. Big ridge in the southeast. You can see this big counterclockwise swirl in the winds. That's going to keep moisture at bay across much of the southeast and keep our severe weather threat focused kind of on this boundary between the cooler air to the north and the warmer air to the south, and right along the flow of that jet. So that's where our focus is going to be for severe weather as we head through the weekend. And you can see that continue. This other little system in the southwest is developed out here. It's moved into the plains. So another round of severe weather that's focused on Arkansas and Missouri and places like Dallas as we get into Sunday. So that's what's going on there. At the surface, dew points coming up out of the Gulf. You can see that green area. Nice returns out of the Gulf. That just continues to persist. The boundary shows up really well here. You see the dry line, cold front area? Along this boundary, it's cooler up here, it's warmer and moister down here. That's where you're going to get your thunderstorms to fire. So you kind of watch that as we go through time. But plenty of rich moisture coming in, particularly on the southern areas, and it just sort of sweeps back in again as we get a new system out here pumping up heights. And so that's what's driving our severe weather threat. So pay attention as we get toward the end of the week and into the weekend. Looking at how that plays out at the surface, this will make a little bit more sense to you. Thursday evening into the early morning hours on Friday, seeing that severe weather threat up here in Iowa, maybe southern Minnesota. And then as we go through the course of the day on Friday afternoon, big area of thunderstorms lines up really nicely with the SPC severe weather threat. And again, that shifts a little bit south, particularly in the north as we head into Saturday afternoon and into the evening, overnight hours on Sunday. And we get another little storm system winding up out here in the southern plains on Sunday, and that's going to move up again straight due northeast as they always do, bringing a cold front through and just rolling this on out in time. The active pattern continues. We're not going to get into a lull. We're going to see severe weather threats probably pop up every single day over the course of the next week or so. So you can see that active pattern continuing. We're not going to focus specifically on where these things are placed, but just know that plenty of energy exists. We're going to see that active pattern continue over the course of the next week or so. And that's going to be shown, by the jet stream here. You can see the jet kind of coming in, the southern branch down here, northern branch up here. It's coming into the west coast now, bringing plenty of energy in over the Rockies, creating cyclogenesis in the plains that's moving on to the Great Lakes. And we're just seeing a continuation of that energy out here. Nice trough in the west. When you have a trough in the west and that sort of southwesterly flow out ahead of that pumps up moisture and heights in the east, you get storm potential, big jet streaks in the mid-levels. And that's your general jet stream pattern. We get out here toward the end. We got a big bowl-shaped trough over the U.S. So know that's what's going on there. Let's bring that down. You can see it a little bit better. And here's our temperature pattern. So starting this weekend, we're looking at Saturday afternoon. Above normal in the east. We're finally going to warm up Friday from this cool down that we're going to have in the east. And cool temperatures will continue to persist in the northeast as we go through the weekend. But then after that, a big ridge develops over the east. We're seeing plenty of warm temperatures as we get into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week. A little cooler out west. And then that troughing continues to shift a little bit toward the east as we go through time. But again, the long range becomes murky. So, keep an eye on it. But generally speaking, we're going to be returning to a warmer than average temperature pattern in the west. and it's going to be a little bit cooler, or I'm sorry, in the east, a little bit cooler out west. And so when you see that kind of a pattern shake up right here in the middle of the country, particularly in this area, I'm going to draw a circle here. This is the area to pay attention to for severe weather over the next week and a half, something like that. That's where the majority of it will be focused. That doesn't mean no areas outside of that will see any severe weather or rain, but that's where the focus is going to be when you see this kind of a weather pattern shaping up. So that's that. And then you're finally here, temperature or the precipitation footprint puts the most rain in that potentially that same area that I drew. That's where the focus of activity is going to be. We're going to see multiple inches of rain. The light blues are 2 inches or higher. As you get into the darker light purple, I'm saying it all wrong. The light purple, this is purple, 2 inches or higher, and then the darker purple is going to be much more than that, so up to 5 inches or so. But a large area of the country is seeing some rain, so that's good. And then our 6 to 10 day outlook from the Weather Prediction Center kind of bears out everything I just said. A little cooler up here in the west and northwest. Focus of the warmer air is in the east, particularly the southeast. Much above normal in the areas that we are kind of in our focus for severe weather. Arkansas, Missouri, and Oklahoma, and so forth. And then above pretty much in the center part of the country. So plenty of areas getting rain. And so that's it, folks. That's our forecast for the next few days. Above normal temperatures returning after we get into the end of the week. In the meantime, it's going to cool down over the east. We're going to be a little bit below normal, and severe weather chances will ramp up as we get toward the end of the week. So be weather aware, pay attention, come back here. I'll have it all covered for us here and keep us up to speed on how things are shaking out. And that brings us to the answer to today's Weather IQ. The question was, what is the Beaufort scale used to measure humidity, precipitation, wind speed, or air pressure? And the answer, of course, is wind speed. It's not a scale that we use all the time now. As a matter of fact, it was developed by Sir Francis Beaufort in 1805, and it was used to measure the wind speed by observing its effects on the sea and land, ranging from calm, which is force 0, it's called force, that's the how they measure that scale, to force 12. And so the purpose was designed to help mariners and others estimate wind speeds and predict sea conditions, particularly in the absence of instrumentation. And here is the scale that is the Beaufort wind scale, force 0 all the way up to force 12. You can read this and put it on. I'm not going to do all of this, but calm, light air, light breeze, gentle breeze, fresh breeze. You might have heard of a fresh breeze. Well, that's where that comes from. It's force 5. Down here to 10 is a storm, violent storm, hurricane, and you can read through this. You can pause it if you want to. But this is the Beaufort wind scale, folks. I thought that was interesting. Billy Joel actually has a song called Stormfront on his album called Stormfront, and there's a section in that, in the bridge part, where he talks about a force 9 blowing on the Beaufort scale, and that's what he's talking about. So if you get a chance to listen to that song, it's kind of interesting. Anyway, I hope that helps you today. Now you know about the Beaufort wind scale. Now you know about the weather. And as always, this is Cold Rain reminding you that if other stations run 24/7, we got you covered 48/14 right here at Cold Rain's Weather World. Take it easy, folks. Have a blessed afternoon.